Changing Lanes, the official podcast of BMW. Welcome to this episode of Changing Lanes, the official podcast of BMW. My name is Jonathan.
And I'm Sara, and on today's podcast, we're talking about something that maybe is not immediately associated with cars, but in fact does play an important role when it comes to driving, and that is the senses. So sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. I know that a lot of times all of us are just too rushed, not paying attention, and we don't really experience a lot of these things consciously, but they are super important and they have a huge impact on our sense of well-being.
Most definitely. I mean, like the enjoyment you get from eating something delicious, or feeling inspired listening to music that moves you, or, I don't know, the deep feeling of coziness that you get snuggling underneath a soft blanket on a cold winter's day.
Yep. Jonathan, there's actually a Danish word that describes this kind of cozy enjoyment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called hygge. It's spelled Hygge. And in fact, it's taken over the world recently. I mean, it's not really something that can be translated very well into any one single word in English. It's more like a kind of approach to life that encompasses a feeling of pleasure and contentment just through the enjoyment of simple things, either when you're by yourself or with others. Hygge, as it's known, it's this feeling of well-being and relaxation.
Just you describing it, I'm feeling all chilled out and easygoing. So, maybe if we did try and find an English comparable word to hygge, maybe it's coziness. It kind of comes close, but, it just doesn't sound as cool and sophisticated like hygge. So, I'd imagine hygge can be experienced, on the couch on a lazy Sunday afternoon watching your favorite movie while snacking on popcorn, and you may be checking out Netflix and just feeling all nice and cozy, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Though, for me, hygge would involve some hot cocoa and a good book on the couch instead of popcorn in the movie. But yes, hygge, though, isn't necessarily limited to the couch or even to being at home. You can actually experience this kind of feeling of well-being, let's say in a beautifully designed restaurant, or when you're somewhere looking at a beautiful cascading waterfall or a sunset. All of these things can be hygge.
Ah, nice. Okay, so I think I'm getting the hang of it, actually. So hygge is like about experiencing a sense of well-being in your environment, like no matter where you are, even if it's integrated into the interior design of a car.
Yes, Jonathan, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, so there's a Korean designer named Jin-Sop Lee, and he has a theory about 5-sense design. He says that, and I quote here, "Good design not only looks good, but it sounds, smells, and feels good too." So hygge and coziness for all the senses, so to speak. Our favorite place would therefore be somewhere that makes us happy in as many of these 5 categories as possible.
Nice. And that's what today's podcast is all about, uncovering the secrets behind your favorite places. So come with us on a sensory search for clues about the magic of feel-good locations as we dive into the 5 senses.
Let's do it, Jonathan. All right. Why don't we start with sight? This maybe is the most obvious sense to start with, because what we see has a huge impact on how we feel in our environment. And I can tell you that as far as sight goes, the kind of colors that I see all around me have a huge impact on how I feel. And for me, I really like things that are streamlined and cool. So that's why in my house, for example, I have chosen white and blues and grays as the color scheme for my walls and my furniture and my decorations, because for me, sort of the visual of lightness and blues, maybe because it reminds me of the sky or maybe of the sea, I immediately get a sense of calm and well-being, and that's a very relaxing thing for me to have all around me. So that's one way that the colors that I see impact my experience of hygge. And what about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I've had a similar experience. Just last winter, I was driving from Spain to Germany and was driving up the coast. And I decided to stop in Barcelona because it's a great city. You wanted to see a little bit of, action on the street and street performers and have good food and take in the culture. And I'd been driving for so long and I was in so many traffic jams and I was just ready just to take a shower in my hotel room and just chill out for a bit. And I remember walking through the reception, the hotel's front door into the reception area, into the lobby area, and you're on this big bustling street in Barcelona with all this action going on, and then you come into this gorgeous space of, dark gray columns with gold lighting and a beautiful red carpet and big exotic plants. And I was like, whoa, this is really nice. That's the first time that I really felt that idea of hygge with sight, where you just walk into a new environment and you're like, whoa, I'm transported into a different environment altogether. And then, of course, checking into my hotel room and the white, crisp sheets on a big, fluffy bed. And I'm not one to do this, but I actually did it. I took a picture of the hotel room because it looked just so nice and cozy before, of course, unpacking my bag and throwing everything all over the floor. But yeah, it's true. Hygge, most definitely with sight, I would say, 100% the first thing to focus on.
All right. Why don't we move on to the second sense that can cause a feeling of hygge, and that is sound. Jonathan, what about you? What role does sound play in your life?
Oh, geez. Yeah, speaking of traveling, I was in Lisbon with a couple friends, and we went to this museum. And also, Lisbon in Portugal is a big, bustling city, and it was great to walk around and see the city and see the sights and taste the amazing food. But the sounds of the beeping cars and everything was pretty heavy. And so we went to this museum just to get in some art and check out some things. And there was this installation of, I can't even remember the name of it, but it was like calming and everything. This sort of installation environment, calming atmosphere. And we were like, what is this? Let's check it out. So you go into this room and it's 360 degrees around you, this aquarium with all these different fish. And you think am I in a museum or am I in a proper aquarium? What's going on? And at first, you're like, oh, okay, look at the fish, look at the water, it's calming. But then you didn't realize until 5 minutes later that they had this soundscape of music, really calming music. And instantly, the vibe in that room was just so chilled out. And they had all these different seating arrangements, these big blocks everywhere, this pyramid of all these different squares that you could sit on and just watch the fish and listen to the music. And we were in there for 2 hours just in this room, and it was so cool and calm and great. And before we left, we said, hey, can you take a picture of all of us? This is such a great exhibit. And you can see it on our faces, all my friends together. We look so relaxed, so calm. And whenever I look at this picture, years later, I can still hear the music playing in the background. What about you?
Well, it's interesting that you mention that it was in connection with fish. So again, this idea of water as being something that creates a feeling of calm, and whether it's mixed with the soothing music that you just talked about. What comes to my mind is last winter, I took a trip to the Bavarian forest. And now I live in a really big city. I live in Berlin and I live in the center of the city. So, for me, usually when I'm out and about, I just hear cars and traffic and, sirens and people and lots of sort of urban noise. And so when I was down south in Bavaria in the forest, I went for a walk and there had just been a snowfall. just the sound of the stream gurgling and somehow reflecting. There's an echo almost just from the snow that had collected on the trees. Like that sound of moving water in nature just immediately brought this overwhelming feeling of calm and well-being. I mean, this was definitely hygge, if there ever was a feeling of hygge. And I suppose maybe it's not surprising that this is a Nordic idea. It's a Scandinavian sort of lifestyle or idea, and God only knows they get lots of snow in Scandinavia. So I mean, maybe there is something about like the silence or the quiet that comes through snowfall and this sound of water moving. I mean, lots of these, even nowadays, these relaxation tapes or YouTube channels, you have the sound of falling rain or streams gurgling or the sound of waves. Like, again, like somehow it seems for human beings, water is just innately soothing. And yeah, so for me, that was the water gurgling in the stream and the snow that gave me an audio sense of hygge.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's great. Funny how water has that effect, doesn't it? That sound of water, the feeling of water, the touch of water.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on now to the next sense, and it's something that can transport us to a state of hygge immediately, and that is the sense of touch, of course. And again, Jonathan, you mentioned this, like, the cozy blanket. And I mean, that's what I also immediately think of, just warm towels on the skin or a soft feather blanket on a cold day, or just, a very luxurious sort of, feather pillow that you can sort of sink into, and that feeling of softness and being enveloped by softness. I mean, that for me is immediately makes me feel hygge for sure. Just
totally.
Anything, just, cotton sheets, warm, fuzzy towels. So yeah, that's a hygge for me.
Oh, great. Yeah, hygge for me for the sense of touch is my dog, Dexter, a little French bulldog, Dexter.
Okay.
So, you come home from a hard day or an exhausting day, and, my dog's there waiting for me, so excited and panting and like jumping around. And I always, scratch behind his ears really quickly, then grab some quick dinner, and he just waits patiently at my feet because he knows very soon after I've eaten, it's his time. So I finish my dinner, put my dirty dishes in the dishwasher, and then I'm like, all right, Dexter, it's your time. And we hop on the couch, and he jumps up and he just like puts his chest like right in my direction. That's his spot, right between his chest, where he likes to get scratched, and behind the ears as well. And I can scratch and scratch and scratch, and just feeling the fur going in the same direction, patting the fur over and over and over again. And it has a wonderful sense of touch. And then, my hand gets tired, but then he takes his paw, and he's such a small dog. I don't know how much power he has, but he somehow has a way of just like forcefully scooping my hand back on top of his ear or back on top of his chest. I'm
very clever dog too, I guess.
I'm like, wow, you're pretty dexterous, Dexter. I mean, he really loves his evening scratches. So that's, for me, especially at the end of a really hard day, I'm just like, I need a little bit of time with my Dexter just to calm down and get that hygge feeling through the sense of touch.
Well, Jonathan, sounds to me like Dexter is experiencing a hygge feeling, because he clearly wants you to keep stroking him as long as possible. So there's some hygge for your dog as well.
Exactly. And then there's the next sensory of hygge, one sense that brings us back to a place in time, and it's the sense of smell. This sensory time traveling that we all experience is actually called something scientific. It's called episodic memory. So our sense of smell has a direct link to memories and emotions, much more of a direct link than any other sense out there. So one sense of smell that I always get whenever I smell it is there's this, I don't even know the name of it, the name of the perfume, but my grandmother always wore this one perfume when I was a kid. And whenever I would go over to her house or my grandparents' house, and I would immediately, get that sense of that smell of her perfume and know that I'd be taken care of for the weekend. She would make grilled cheese sandwiches, and we would watch cartoons Saturday mornings. And she always had that perfume on. And even to this day, if somebody else is wearing it, I'm instantly transported back to those Saturday morning cartoons, watching with my grandmother, eating grilled cheese sandwiches. And it's like a time traveling machine, the sense of smell, and it's definitely connected with hygge. What about you?
That's a really nice story,
Oh,
Jonathan.
thanks.
It sounds like they're very fond memories of your grandma.
Yeah.
What's funny is that I had this hygge feeling just the other day when it was raining here in Berlin. And as I mentioned, I live in the center of the city, so it's this very urban environment, and there's a particular smell of rain on concrete pavement. Like I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
I do.
It's a very peculiar smell. I don't know, like it's just, it can't be compared to anything else. Just I don't know if it's like the pollution in the city and the the combination of wetness on concrete or something.
Yeah.
But that smell immediately transports me back in time to my childhood growing up in New York City when I would lie in bed and it would rain. And again, it was the same, or at least very, very similar smell of raindrops on a concrete sidewalk. It's maybe it sounds like a strange thing, but for some reason I have a very vivid childhood memory of listening to the rain in my bed as a kid, and that smell coming through the window of the rain on the concrete. And whenever I smell that now, years and years later, it immediately creates that link for me in my mind.
Wow. So cool.
Yes. Okay. I think there's one more sense left,
Yes.
Jonathan, and that is taste. And I can tell you, for me, I always get this feeling of hygge that washes over me. I mean, maybe this is kind of boring, but when I eat a warm chocolate cake, it's because maybe it's because it's something that I don't allow myself to indulge in too often. So it's kind of a very special treat, but like eating like a very warm, gooey chocolate cake and just taking like a spoonful of that into my mouth. And I'm just like completely overcome by this, like the world is just wonderful. And I mean, for sure, this is hygge. So for me, it's definitely just warm chocolate cake.
So that's what hygge tastes like for you, warm chocolate cake.
Yes.
I think everybody listening is right there with you. I know I am. So my taste hygge story actually happened last weekend. I was at a restaurant. It's like an Asian fusion, modern, ultra cool, ultra hip, vegan restaurant that everybody's been talking about. I'm like, okay, I got to go and check it out. And I wouldn't consider myself a foodie, but I do like food. I actually enjoy a warm chocolate cake even more. So thanks for bringing that up. But I was like, okay, let's check out this restaurant. So I got there and it looked really ultra cool. And I sat down and the waitress came over and she said, "Welcome to the restaurant. Have you been here before?" I'm like, "No, not yet." And she said, "Okay, think of it like Asian fusion tapas. Order lots of different things and small little platters will come." I'm like, oh, geez. Okay. I'm used to getting like one main thing, like the duck or the chicken. And she's like, no, just play around with it, experiment. I was like, okay, great. So I looked at the menu and I was confused. And I said, can you make any recommendations? And she said, the number one recommendation that I can make is the cauliflower.
Cauliflower?
Yeah, and I was like,
are you serious?
That's exactly what I said. I'm like, nice try, right? Like you probably have a ton of cauliflower in the back because like nobody's buying it. She's like, no, seriously, try the cauliflower. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking it's little tapas in little bowls. Like if I order it and I don't like it, I'm not wasting the entire meal. It's just a little appetizer,
Okay.
So I order the cauliflower and other things. And notice I can't remember all the other things I remembered that I ordered. So she comes she takes my order. She goes away. She gets it and she comes over and she places it on the table. And the cauliflower is like way over to the side. I'm just ignoring it and I'm eating everything else. And like I said, I can't remember what I ate because when I finally did reach on over and do a far reach, like, oh, let me just try this at least one cauliflower. And it looked weird. Like it was, cauliflower is white, but like the top of the head of it with like the little, what is that? Like the actual cauliflower, not the stem?
The florets?
Yeah, the florets. Thank you. The florets were like brown, looked like they were grilled or like braised or something. It was like, okay. And there's this really weird red sauce with green flaky leaves inside. I'm like, this looks so weird. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And I take it to my mouth and I'm really like, oh God, here we go. Cauliflower, vegan, gross. It is the best thing I have ever eaten this year. Like it was so good.
Okay. Who would have thought that cauliflower can lead you into just a sense of hygge?
Yeah.
I would never have expected it. And there you have it, folks. The theory of 5 sense design: sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. Whether you call it hygge, coziness, or just feeling at home, you now know the secrets behind why your favorite places are your favorite places. From a Barcelona hotel bar to the Bavarian forest.
From the rain raining onto the concrete in Berlin to petting your dog at the end of the day.
The 5 senses play an integral part in how things are designed. And Jonathan, I don't know about you, but we've been talking so much about food. I think we need to go out for some cauliflower and chocolate cake, like right after we're done doing this podcast.
Sounds like a plan. I'll be right with you in a second, but first, let's wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's episode of Changing Lanes.
And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to our podcast for all our future episodes.
And to dive deeper into all things BMW, head on over to bmw.com to learn more.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Changing Lanes.
See you next time.
All right, I'm hungry. Let's get out of here.
I want some chocolate cake.